Deborah, with her 30 years of being an entrepreneur and creating over 7 companies, knows exactly what it means to accept the mission. When you make that decision, when you accept the mission to become a solopreneur, to take yourself and your talents to market, then you embrace a life of not only unlimited possibilities, but also the unknown. It's an elixir of fear and bravery that only someone who's taken the leap really understands. On our show, Deb digs deep with her guests to highlight what you, the listener, wants to know. The stories, the whys, and the hows to navigate the journey to success. Get ready to hear from some of the most incredible mission takers from Generation Z to Boomers. So sit up, perk up, and get ready to be blown away. Now here is your host, Deborah Drummond.
Well, welcome. Best audience ever. I know, you know what? I have someone who does a podcast on the show, so maybe I shouldn't say and scream that too loud, but you guys just rock. If this is the first time that you have landed on Mission Accepted, I am so happy that you are here, and you will be as well, because the stories of people that have taken the mission are not only inspiring, but they really make you feel like there's something more to life, and it's going to inspire you to be a little what I call gumption. So our guest today, Ron is, you know what? We connected in this beautiful new world of social, Ron Kaiser, and we connected for something very different. I mean, he is a TEDx speaker. You know, we both like to speak. He's an incredible author. Just looking at a revision right now, he's going to tell us about his book. But one of the things that we really connected on is our relationship and love for the brain. And he spent many, many years, and I'm sure he's going to tell us more about it, but I had never heard of the Jefferson Headache Center, and he's spent decades there in his work and has stepped into the world. He eased himself in about 10 years ago into this crazy world of entrepreneurship, and how lucky are we? So Ron, everyone kind of comes to entrepreneurship in their own different way. This show is all about that. So maybe if you can share with our audience, you weren't one of those people that in your 20s decided like, I'm going to go be an entrepreneur and see how this rolled. It actually, I always say sometimes people go and chase the world of entrepreneurship, and sometimes it comes to them. When I hear your story, I see how it unfolded and came to you. And for those of you that are not watching but listening, when Ron talks about how many years he has been on the planet helping people, you're not going to believe him, because this man honestly looks at least 20 years younger than what he is. And I'll let him tell his age if he wants to. But Ron, share with us a little bit about your history of how what you did at the Headache Center, because it was so informative. It had so much information for me that I didn't know, and then how you eased into the world of entrepreneurship.
Sure. Well, first of all, Deb, thanks for having me. I'm really glad to be here and talking with you. Enjoys our conversations whenever we talk.
Yeah.
But first of all, obviously, I didn't think in terms of entrepreneurship in my 20s. Probably didn't know the word. Surely I couldn't spell it, and there certainly were no college programs that even offered entrepreneurship. So if I wanted to, and if I knew what it was, I couldn't pursue it. So the reality is, I did what many people do at that time. We find careers in areas that are, suitable to our interests. So I grew up in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and in those days, everybody who grew up in Minneapolis went to the University of Minnesota, then went away for their first job. I went to Los Angeles, where I taught, and then was a school counselor and got more excited about psychology. I also taught physical education as well as social studies. So I was always interested in keeping in shape, not really realizing that that's a real plus as you get older. Over time, with skipping a few jobs and generations and stuff like that, wound up at the Headache Center, which was initially located at another hospital before it closed. Then it became part of Thomas Jefferson University and Jefferson Health System, and became really one of the most world famous centers in the world. And this is where people come. We call it a tertiary headache center, people who have already seen their primary doctor and perhaps a neurology specialist and still have debilitating headache would be coming to see us. So we get people who have headaches that are out of control. Some of them needed to be hospitalized that have the headache broken intravenously and so on. Doesn't take a lot of imagination to recognize that if you have a chronic headache, it can have a significant impact psychologically. Rarely caused by psychological factors, but there tends to be a good deal of psychological reaction. So obviously I was heavily involved in that field. And one of the things that I learned is that headache, unlike many of the other neurological disorders and many disorders in general, is not a deteriorating condition. It doesn't cause structural damage. It doesn't, in almost every case, is not unpreventable. In other words, while you may be headache prone, they can be controlled. So from a psychologist standpoint, the goal was to make the person not become defined by their headache, but only be part of them so that they can become more and more in touch with the real world, learn to plan around headaches. They may be inconvenient, but they don't have to be debilitating. So the same principles seem to apply as I got older and saw some of my peers, some of whom aged well, some of whom didn't. And I don't know, something kind of clicked in, because I was having a pretty good time, and something seemed to click. Once my wife and I were out with two other couples, and I happened to mention this was back in my 70s. Now I'm 84, if anybody was asking. And I said something along the line of, if I knew how much fun the 70s would be, I'd have grown older faster. And while I expected maybe not everybody would agree, some people actually got angry. The notion that you would think of doing that. And another conversation that got me kind of reactive is, again, we were out with another couple, and my wife asked the guy, this was a Saturday evening, what'd you do today? He said, nothing. I'm going to do the same thing tomorrow. And that was what made me angry. So I just felt that, we now have the science, the knowledge to know that people can live in good health for much longer. And I felt that it was part of my obligation being on Earth and having a certain amount of knowledge in this area to be able to share it. And so I gradually moved in the direction of active aging, or what I call rejuvenaging, which is a term that I coined and actually trademarked with the U.S. Trademark and Patent Office.
I think that's incredible. Let's just stop there for a minute and take a breath, because I, like you, didn't hear the word entrepreneur till I probably was one. And I think a few years after, I just, I really just called myself self-employed, right? I just did massage, I just did this. I just did aromatherapy. People say, so what do you do? I am an aromatherapist. I do massage. I lecture. And because no one was writing my paycheck, it didn't occur to me to say the word entrepreneur, because I remember in grade 7 having a class, and they were like, the girls were there, and it's like, okay. And they talked about teachers, stewardess, and secretaries, right? You automatically went into home ec. You weren't allowed to go into mechanics. It didn't even occur to people. I completely sucked at sewing. Thank God I excelled at cooking, because I then had an A in one and a D in the other. At the end of my 6 months, I didn't have my pattern cut. And so they passed me through. So we all know I don't sew, but you can come for dinner anytime. I'm told I'm pretty good. But just how different it is, even when you talk, I think it's so important. I love what you do, because there is an idea of, and I think we've been really ingrained. If we haven't heard the word 65 is the day for retirement since the day that we were born, I don't know. And then thanks to an insurance company, at least in Canada, it was like Freedom 55, and the concept of actually retiring earlier, and could you have the money? And And then people like yourself going, man, this party doesn't even get started till you're 70. This party doesn't even get going. And the flip that it has taken has been incredible, but still people need to hear that and know that. And life has changed and lifestyles changed. I was at a group, they selected, a certain amount of people that had success in their business. And they were like, hey, we're going to run this group. We'd love for you to be a part of it. And, you know, bless this man. I mean, honestly, I don't know what he was thinking, but they have this vibrant group of, I mean, I guess we were in late 40s to, early 50s. And they were like, they brought this man to come in to talk to us about succession. Now you are in a room of top income earning entrepreneurs. And this man comes in and he starts talking about succession. Now there's nothing wrong with succession, but it's kind of like wrong class. So he says, he looks at me and he goes, so when I say the word succession, what comes to mind? And bless his heart, they would say in the South. I was like, death. Like I wasn't being rude. I wasn't being ignorant. I was like, I couldn't conceptualize not doing what I do on some degree till throw dirt on the box. And so he was kind of taken back. I was like, I'm sorry. I don't mean to blow your presentation, but I'm not quite sure what to tell you. That was my honest answer. So I think there's a whole new paradigm around when we decide, how we decide, and how we spend honestly, some of the best, we're the wisest now. Tell me about what it was like to be a TEDx speaker. How did that come into your life?
Well, first of all, it was a great opportunity to get my ideas out in an audience, both present and since then. It's had almost 200,000 views. And it was, let's see if I can remember the title exactly, but it was something along the lines of growing older with enthusiasm to change the world, or making the world better by growing older with enthusiasm. And I felt really strengthened by the very notion that it was accepted and that I could present it to an audience, because up until that time, and my TEDx talk was, I think, in 2018, up until that time, if you wanted to talk about decline, if you wanted to talk about Alzheimer's, if you wanted to talk about nursing homes and things of that, that was what older age speakers were being recruited to talk about. And the very notion of talking about doing something that is not negative, that's not passive, that really is a continuation of what people should have been doing all their lives. That was terrific feedback for me, and hope it changed a lot of lives. I got a lot of contact from it and a lot of compliments, and it kind of spurred me to do some of the things that I've been doing since then. I actually came out with the book in a year earlier, and maybe the book was 2018 and TEDx was 2019, but it was around then. And I think now the discussions on social media and so on, you can find groups and people and discussions that relate to growing older more actively. And again, there's tremendous amount of science to suggest that that we don't have to be outliers. Right. I'm sorry, when I said you're much younger, but we don't.
I got to tell you, it's so interesting to be called younger at 57. I love it. I love it. I'm so excited. People are like, yeah, I love that. I love how that's changed. I just love how that's changed culturally, how that's changed. So I know you talked about a Facebook group, and I know when people reach out to you, you have a private Facebook group that people can become a part of, and we're going to have all your information in the show notes. But so you talked a lot about going out and having conversations with obviously friends, not just other couples that you didn't know. And they got angry and you got angry, which is awesome, because I think that sparks a lot of people's mission. I remember to this day, my girlfriend, who's still a friend of mine, who said to me, the world's not ready for an aromatherapy home party company. I probably did 10 years of my company just because I was so pissed off. So anyways, so I want to ask you, I like to ask people, what sparked your mission? Like, what made you decide to take this from your everyday working from Monday to Friday, 9 to 5 with that same information and really taking it out to the world of what you do now, which you work with people in this the betterment, the betterment years, let's call them. So, is that what sparked you? Is that what keeps you inspired? What keeps you inspired?
Well, again, I think that the notion of passivity is something that's pretty foreign to me. So I mean, I always knew I wasn't going to retire as such, and I wanted to help spread the word. And then an added thing was, COVID came along, and there are some real important lessons that I wanted to make sure didn't get lost from it. For one thing, who were the people who got sickest and died from COVID? There were the people who were immunocompromised, had conditions, and were in facilities where it could spread. So, while it might have been something where we thought, geez, I hope I don't have to go to a nursing home or stuff like that before, but, we should check out which are the good ones and so on. Once COVID came along, what you want to be able to do is be as healthy as possible, to live as independently as possible, and as long as possible, because, age itself, which I kind of object to, but age itself was considered a comorbid condition to start with. And then when you add it to it, other diagnoses, then that makes things a lot worse. And I just think, I have identified, based on both my work and the research of others, what I call the non-negotiable four. There are four things that I think people have to really do, and they're not negotiable. If you care about, living or not spending decades, being cared for, then you want to make sure that you're eating healthy. You want to do what I call owning your body, which includes things like exercise, adequate sleep, meditation related activities, and so on. You want to be able to keep the mind active, and you want to be socially connected, because the research has clearly demonstrated that loneliness in the older age ranges is right up there with obesity, smoking, and a sedentary lifestyle in terms of being killers. So, while there are no guarantees, and, genetics play a role, luck can play a role, although less so than a lot of people may think, and nobody knows what's going to happen tomorrow. But the fact is that, just like I didn't know if I was going to get through my bachelor's program or my master's program or doctorate, I don't know how long this is going to go on, but I want to maximize those chances. And again, as I said, we have the knowledge. There are, very important gerontologists and others who say that the average lifespan should be up to 100 or 120. And while we may not be there yet where that's fairly average, again, that's a long, if you retire at 55 or 65, that's a long time to be passive and a long time to be taken care of if you get sicker. And I just feel obligated to kind of change that.
And phenomenal. It reminds me of a story of, so my ex-husband's grandmother she's from, they're from London, and she used to work for Central Intelligence in the days where the computers were almost as big and tall as the room, right? And so she came from that kind of background and, raised a child and what have you. And so Hazel must have been in her 70s, and she was declining. And we're like, this is a woman who's on top of her game. She's laughing, and she was declining, and she was going to the doctor and this prescription and this prescription. And me and my husband at the time were like, something's not right here. So what we did is we got her a computer. And that woman, I swear, in 30 days, as God is my witness, in 30 days was a different woman. Mm-hmm. And she just, it expanded her world. It expanded her world. She had never remarried. Her husband passed early on in her years, never remarried. I used to ask her why, and she'd say, I don't want to wash another man's socks. And I'm like, okay, you do you. But, and she, and as the family grew up and the grandchildren went on with their life, there was a sense of loneliness and non-productivity. And it was honestly, she came off all her medication, and it was a game changer for her health. So now for you, I know that you said the pandemic was pivotal in the fact that you no longer were going to a location for work. It kind of started to organically, you were working from home. And I believe you said, was it June 30th was the kind of last day that you went into what we would say is kind of our bricks and mortar work. And now you are looking to do now. I mean, first of all, those 4 components you talked about, is that in your book? Like, can we get more information about that in your book?
Yeah, I actually had them as 3 in my first book. In my revision, they're going to have the 4. I had health and fitness as one thing, but I broke it down chapter wise into healthy eating and exercising and so on. But I became a little concerned. Some people say, well, I kind of interpreted it as, since it was 3, to say, well, I eat pretty healthy. I eat organically, don't exercise that much. But exercise is the most critical thing in terms of brain growth. Mm-hmm. So just it ranks like ahead of reading and things of that nature because of what it does, physiologically, in terms of the oxygen, in terms of the fact that the brain, unlike what we used to think when I was in graduate school, the brain can continue to evolve throughout the lifespan. And the 2 things that I encourage people to do, from a brain growth standpoint, aside from obviously being involved and keeping the mind active, is exercise and to learn novel things, to be able to learn a new language, to be able to, if you've never done art, things of that nature, even such seemingly dumb things like starting to comb your hair with your left hand or button your buttons with your left hand if you're right-handed, just to get the brain a little different kind of activity.
Yeah, create some new neural pathways. Yeah. So you have now embarked into the world of entrepreneurship. So thank you. It's about 10 years ago that you said. And I believe the last conversation we were just sharing, you're doing groups? Are you working with people one-on-one? Like, how are you taking your work to market?
Well, there's several ways. My most current important ones, I think, are, number one, I have several groups all over social media called that are just my pages that are called The Mental Health Gym, which is also the name of my website. But I recently started one called Growing Older with Enthusiasm, which is a private Facebook group. And I am in September starting a group that I'm calling Getting Back in the Game, really directed not at people who are in the retirement age range, but kind of in the beginning of the second half century of life. Because, I'll work on the third half century in a while. But right now, looking at people who maybe in their 50s and 60s who have kind of focused on building their career, their family responsibilities, doing kinds of things that justified them being too busy to, do enough self-care. And what I like to do, again, based on my non-negotiable 4, is have people pick out a couple of areas, such as reducing the medications, with medical supervision, such as being able to plan to be empty nesters and maintain interests without, because that's the problem sometimes over time. A lot of times parents coalesce around their kids, but don't realize they've grown apart. So, whether we can build in some shared interests, things of that nature, be able to, again, obesity is an epidemic. Now, I have some pretty good ability to help in that regard because I actually I was never obese. BMI was borderline in terms of overweight, but I lost over 20 pounds from my height in the beginning of the epidemic, where I'd gained maybe 3 or 4 pounds, but I'm now about 21 pounds lighter than that. And it's not that hard. There's certain things, intermittent fasting between dinner and breakfast isn't that hard. Balancing out the meals that you're eating. Dessert isn't necessarily something that was, other than fruit, isn't necessarily something that was present in nature. So, I mean, there are a lot of things that people have gotten accustomed to, and
Right.
the group will give them support. It's both an individual coaching and group coaching process, and certainly anybody who would be interested, I would be glad to on a non-obligation basis talk with them about it, and maybe give them some advice for themselves whether they join or not.
Right. It's so interesting because as you talk, when you talk about dessert, for example, so I study Ayurveda, and my teacher, one of the things that we really make sure when you're preparing an Ayurvedic meal is that it has all the different flavors that need to satisfy us neuronally. And coming from a culture where it was meat, potato, vegetable, and dessert, and dessert was a really, great thing. It used to drive me crazy, as a holistic health practitioner, some of the products that we used to tell people to eat for breakfast. I'm like, here's a mantra, #muffins or cake. Like #muffins or cake. No, I don't care if it has blueberries, and I don't care if it's got oat bran in it. It's a piece of cake. So it's muffins or cake without the icing. But anyways, she says if you satisfy all the flavors in your meal, so you have a sweet flavor in there, whether you're sauteing onions or you're doing mango. That's why in a lot of cultures there's chutney with your meal. It actually satisfies you so that dessert isn't, you're not left yearning. There's so many things that people can do to satisfy that. So let's take it a little bit in the direction of, so here's something interesting that, I always say sometimes I hear the questions of my audience. And so not only do we need to change our paradigm thinking in relationship to when we retire, what retirement looks like. We've worked hard all our life. Now I want to stick my feet up and do nothing every Saturday or what have you, whatever that means to people. But do you find as well that sometimes it's maybe their adult children that are like, that play into that? Do you know what I mean by that? Like, oh, okay, well, we'll take care of mom, or we'll take care of dad, or, and they start to maybe dismiss their genius. Shall I put it that way?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's a fair way of characterizing it. And I think in many cases, it's very well-meaning. I mean, I think that a lot of times kids grow up hoping that they'll be appreciating what's happened to them. Not everybody, but many appreciate what was happening, hoping they'll be able to pay them back in some way. And, it just, realistically requires a certain amount of assertiveness about your aging, to recognize. I think you have to treat it as an educational process that, hey, not everybody needs this kind of thing. And, we've always had individual differences. So I think it's important to point out, one of my differences is, it's just as easy for me to walk to the store, which is 2 blocks away, if I need to get food, than the fact that, hey, since you're coming in town anyway to see us, that you stop at the supermarket. I mean, again, there are things that that people may have had fantasies about, and sometimes we can play into this. If this was our fantasy too, that hey, just remember, I'm doing this for you now, but when I'm old, make sure you take care of me. This may have been something that somebody grew up with. So again, I think passivity is really bad when you're growing older. Assertiveness is really good, to assert yourself without being aggressive, without being negative, but to point out, hey, this is where I am at this point, and try and promote that.
Right. I really appreciate everything that you're saying. I'm going to have a last question for you, but being at the stage where I'm at 57, I obviously have a lot of friends and colleagues that are talking about the retirement years and how they're looking forward to the next 3 years, 5 years, 6 years, 7 years. And I personally get a lot of comments like, so are you ever going to retire? Like, and I'm like, and it's not said in a derogatory manner, but it's almost said in a way where I feel like I need to defend myself. Like, it would be okay if I was an artist and continued to paint, or it'd be okay if I'm going to write another book, but continue my work and have shows and create things. There seems to even be like kind of a bit of a cultural, like, if you're still doing what you're doing, if I heard the word workaholic one more time, I think my friends are afraid to say it. I was like, you do you, I do me, or so there's a lot, even colleagues of mine, later people in their 50s, whether it's a woman they're dating or a man that they're dating, if they're single and they're dating people and they're like, well, I'm going to retire then. And there seems to be a mismatch, and there seems to be a lot of judgment. I don't know if the word's judgment or assumption that there's something not quite right for people that aren't wanting to retire at that stage. And it seems to be a very small percentage of people that kind of accept that. There's something like, oh, aren't you going to slow down one day? I'm like, so do you experience that? Have you,
Yeah, absolutely. Just the last couple of months, people were congratulating me on my retirement, and what kind of an accomplishment is that? That you decided not to work, and it wasn't a retirement. It was just a shifting of my resources. That's one of the reasons I coined the term and have been promoting it, of rejuvenaging. It says nothing about retirement. Among the principles in there is that, you develop your own plan for how you're going to do it. And whether you retire from a job or not, that the important thing is that you stay active in the areas of keeping the brain active, staying socially connected, eating healthy, and owning your body. And I think it's just a matter of, how you're allocating those resources. But if somebody thinks in terms of retirement versus passivity, then pretty soon you're going to be dealing with decline. And
right.
There's no obvious reason that we have to decline as we get older.
Right. So there's a message out there, people. Don't ostracize your friends that want to keep going, that want to keep, I love that, claiming your body.
I think one of the things you mentioned earlier may be an antidote to that. As more people go into entrepreneurship and study it and so on, I don't think that's part of the entrepreneur's lexicon, is retirement. So more entrepreneurs may mean fewer, actual retirements.
Right. Well, so here you've dropped so many beautiful hints, and I think it's inspiring not only just to people that are going into the wisdom years, or however you want to describe it, but also it gives people things to really think about preventatively, but also how we look at our generations, how we give respect to, homage to, encourage. Like, the next time someone comes up to you and they're whatever age, whether they're 18, right? We have this new wave of people coming into entrepreneurship, like 18 years old, wanting to start their own business. And people are like, wow, that's so inspiring. That's so cool. Say the same thing to someone who's 60 or 70 or 80. I want to say the same thing to people that are 60 or 70. I want to write up, oh my gosh, that's amazing. That is so cool. you know? So I think that you've had a lot to share. Before we wrap up and I ask you one last final question, is there anything else you'd love to share with us? And when you do, please tell people how to reach you.
Okay, well, the main thing is not new. I mean, I've probably mentioned it lots of times, but activity is the key at every age. And I read in a book, I actually was looking to try and find it, but there's a book, Younger Next Year or something like that, or Younger This Year. And it was a real good book by I believe I know it was a physician and I believe a journalist or a lawyer. And there's a term in there that as you grow older, normality is not your friend. That the goal shouldn't be to blend in with the rest of the people who are declining and so on, because at any age, at least at this point, normal is probably not where you want to be. And as a society, and I think those of us who've been in academia contribute to this, that we've always focused on the normal curve and treated normal as being where you want to be, and not looked at some of the people who are outliers and are doing differently, and not just treat them as background noise to eliminate outside of just consider them as rare events and eliminate them in the statistics. So I hope that's a message that will resonate. And best place to reach me, as I said, I'm all over on social media. I'm very happy to communicate with you directly. The best place is Ron.Kaiser. And I've learned there are a couple of ways of spelling it, but it's Kaiser at thementalhealthgym.com. Every once in a while, I get somebody who spells gym, J-I-M, and it doesn't get to me. So it's supposed to be the equivalent of a physical gym. So it's Ron.Kaiser at thementalhealthgym.com. And I really want to thank you for giving me this opportunity to help spread the word that I know you share.
Absolutely. So my last question to you is, because music for me has just been such a big part of my life, and my listeners and my viewers all know that me and my crazy gal pal Corrine, in August of 2023, we are now preparing ourselves to walk across Ireland. We're doing 8.5 marathons. And people, if you want to tap into that, just go to theydidittour.ca. And I'm sure that there's got to be something we got to be able to do there, because that's going to be super fun. You talk about physical activity. Yeah. So that's just something that we're doing for the music industry, because I so believe that music is great for mental health, physical health, inspiring, motivating. I think it's one of the most non-biased forms of healing in the world. No one really cares. You like jazz? Good for you. No one's going, that's not, someone else likes rap, good for them. Anyways, long story short, I love music. I think it's a powerful healer. I think it's great for all conditions. And I wanted to know, if you're heading over, and let's say you are going to go to that desert island, and you're going to go work out on this desert island, but you're going by yourself, and you're packing your suitcase, and you've got room for one album. What album are you, because of course there's a record player on this desert island, what album are you going to take with you?
It's going to be the album by Bob Dylan that has my back pages in there, that has the line, "But I was so much older then, I'm younger than that now."
Of course it's going to be Dylan. Oh my gosh, that's awesome. That's fantastic.
By the way, he's from Minnesota too.
All right. Homage.
Yeah.
Homage. All right. I want to thank you so much. I want to thank you. You guys have just been the best audience ever. Please share, please watch, please review. That's what helps gets the word out. And that's really what us podcasters do. We definitely do this to help share the word. And I just love you guys. Please share the interview and the podcast. And if you see yourself sitting where Ron is sitting today, and you have something that you want to share, I absolutely would love to hear from you. Love to have you on the show. So just go to deb@debdrummond.com. You can see all the podcasts there. You can watch them. We're on every single channel. But if you want to get through to us and you want to be on the other side of the screen, then please reach out. We'd love to hear from you. Other than that, we will see you again next week. Ron, thank you so much. And bye for now.